Hi everyone, my name is Anthony Romano, and I'm in the MAT Accelerated Masters program for Secondary English. The book that I chose for this professional development webinar is Don Killgallon's Sentence Composing for Middle School. So, what's it all about? What's the central premise? Well, as you see, middle school is in the title, and I'm a pre-service high school teacher, so you may be wondering what that's about. But the thing is that all of the ideas and activities in this book can be just as effectively applied to high school teaching. The book is what Killgallon calls a work text. It's short, it's only 136 pages, consisting of 32 classroom activity ideas. And unlike traditional grammar books that emphasize sentence analysis, Killgallon's book asks students to imitate the sentence styles of professional writers, which makes the sentence composing process more enjoyable and challenging, in theory, that is. The book is divided into four main parts, which are sentence unscrambling, sentence imitating, sentence combining, and sentence expanding. For each of these four sections of the book, there are a whole bunch of different activity ideas. The activities get more challenging as each section of the book continues. As I said before, all of the activities are based on model sentences written by widely respected authors, and they're designed to teach students structures they should but seldom use. In Killgallon's own words, quote, "The rationale is based on the widely accepted mimetic theory of oral language acquisition applied here to written language acquisition in the belief that continual exposure to structures used often by professionals in their sentences will produce attention to, understanding of, and with practice, normal use of such structures by students in their sentences." End quote. So it's the idea that just as you learn to speak as a child by imitating your parents and other experienced speakers, you're learning to write better sentences by imitating how professional writers use written language. But it's actually pretty convenient for me that this book is structured in four parts. So I'm going to summarize the book through these four parts, starting with sentence unscrambling. There are 8 total activities for this first part, and keep in mind that, as I said earlier, the activities get more challenging as they go on. These activities can get pretty hefty, so I'm just going to focus on some of the easier, less complex activities for this webinar. So with the sentence unscrambling activities, you're given sentence parts, and you have to learn how to effectively arrange them. In each part of the book, Killgallon emphasizes close attention to how the sentences are composed. Killgallon also implores the students to apply what they learn to their own sentences, which is pretty much the point of the book. So yeah, I'm going to go through examples with each section of the book, and there are 8 total activities for sentence unscrambling selection, and here's what 2 of those activities look like. So practice 1. Read each pair of sentences, pausing at the slash lines, and then identify the sentence that is divided into meaningful chunks or sentence parts. So you have A, if a man bites a dog, that is news. And then B, if a man bites a dog, that is news. So obviously the answer is A. It's pretty intuitive. It's a lot easier to figure out when you read it aloud or think about it. And then practice 2 is the sentence parts below are chunked meaninglessly. Copy the sentences and reposition the slash lines to make meaningful chunks. When fate hands you a lemon, try to make lemonade. So it's pretty, again, intuitive. So you just move those slashes around to make it make sense. So when fate hands you a lemon, try to make lemonade. So I think that kids would have a pretty easy time, not too much of a difficult time with this. Part 2 is sentence imitating, which is pretty straightforward. You learn how to imitate sentences written by professional writers, and you learn about how those writers vary their sentences. So there's 12 activities total for this one, and I'm going to go through 2 of them. So practice 1. Unscramble and write out each list to make a sentence that imitates the model. So here's the model. He turned his back to the distant fire and peered into the dark, which is written by Anne Rice in Interview with the Vampire. So he gives you not only a model sentence written by a well-respected author, and then he also tells you the author and what text it's from, which is pretty convenient. So now Killgallon gives you the just random sentence parts that are scrambled. So you have A, her fingers drumming on the table, B, she waited, C, and then paced around the room. So you have to unscramble those scrambled sentence parts to make it, to arrange it into a way that that is very similar to the model sentence. So the unscrambled imitation of the model is she waited, her fingers drumming on the table, and then paced around the room. So here's the second example for sentence imitating. Imitate the model sentences using your own content but the same structure as sentence parts in the model. Imitate one sentence part at a time. Aim for approximating, not duplicating the model. If your imitations somewhat resemble the models, they are successful. So here's the model. Molly, the foolish, pretty white mare who drew Mr. Jones's trap, came mincing daintily in, chewing at a lump of sugar, which is from Animal Farm by George Orwell. So a sample student imitation would be the garbage disposal, a noisy, chewing metal mouth that ate the meal's leftovers, began gurgling suddenly, then spitting up a half-eaten carrot. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward for sentence imitating. I think students would have a fairly easy time, not too difficult of a time for this. Now, the third part is sentence combining, which is where students learn how to express information and ideas into one sentence instead of several. And in this section, students practice combining pairs and lists of sentences into one sentence to resemble the way professionals write their sentences. So here, there's 6 activities total for this one in the book. I'm just going to go over one because these get pretty intense. So the one example is combine the pairs of sentences into just one sentence by making the underlined portion part of the first sentence. Decide where the part fits most smoothly into the first sentence. Next, write an imitation of the sentence you produce, using your own content but the structure of that sentence. So the pair, the 2 sentences, is Mrs. Harding disciplined us for handing in messy notebooks. She was our 5th grade teacher. So now if you're going to combine these 2 sentences, which is from Haunted by Joyce Carol Oates, it would look like Mrs. Harding, our 5th grade teacher, disciplined us for handing in messy notebooks. So you move that underline part at the end to the beginning, like the directions said, to create a new type of sentence that's structured differently. So not only did you combine, but you change the structure of the sentence. Now for an imitation, an example would be Jack Kempner, their soccer coach, congratulated the team for winning their toughest game. And now for the final part, it's sentence expanding. In this part, you're given part of a sentence by a professional writer, and you have to add your own sentence parts or expansions to that sentence. Killgallon says you become a partner with a professional writer, working together to compose sentences. There's 6 total activities for this one, and I'm going to go through 2 of them. So practice 1. Expand the following sentences by adding a single word or a series of similar words at the slash mark. Also, to familiarize yourself with how professionals write, copy the sentences. So, if you were to have students do this in the classroom, you'd want them to really get the hang of it, so you'd make them rewrite and copy the sentences over again, which I think is good practice. So the first one, the man was about 50, and then the student is supposed to add something. So for the student example, you could say, the man was about 50, allegedly. So just one word there really makes a big difference. So the next one is from Stephen King's Desperation. So it's a slash in the beginning. It says, the gust of wind threw sand against the side of the car. So the student example, you could just add one word in the beginning. Forcefully, the gust of wind threw sand against the side of the car. So yeah, it's explaining how just adding one word can really add a lot of meaning to the sentence, which I think is valuable for students to understand and see and practice on their own. For the second example, the directions are, a second way to expand sentences is to add phrases. Some sentences contain single phrases and others contain a series of 2 or more of the same kind of phrase. Study the model sentences, especially the different kind of phrases underlined. Write an imitation of each with your own content. So the first one, the model, it's a single phrase. It says, he signaled to Jake, the middle brother, to take over the cash register. So now the imitation of this would just be the principal called to Jimmy, the class president, to run the meeting. So it's pretty straightforward. You're just doing exactly what the model sentence did, just with your own content. So it's pretty much just another imitation. And then, so for the model, the second model is a series of similar phrases added in. So this one is, after a minute, two of the creatures, a doe and her fawn, moved hesitantly down the slope and stood looking at him curiously. So now the student imitation could look like, during the movie, two people, the father and his little boy, applauded wildly for the hero and started cheering at the end. So once again, pretty straightforward, but again, good practice, and you can get more challenging as the activities go on in the book. So now two important teaching ideas and strategies that I learned from this book. There are definitely several. I mean, obviously, because pretty much every page of the book is a good teaching idea or strategy, since it's all activities that you can use. But in a broader sense, I think one of the most important aspects of this book is the fact that it teaches writing and grammar skills in context, which is super important. That's pretty huge for English teachers, because we want to teach grammar in context. When we just give students random grammar worksheets, that's really not benefiting them that much at all. But if we actually take passages from the texts we are reading in class with our students and apply these ideas from Killgallon to the text we're reading in class, it's a great way to have students learn grammar concepts in context, which will help them remember the information and really internalize it rather than merely memorizing it. And another huge idea for me is the fact that each activity in the book is increasingly difficult, as I've mentioned a few times. As you've seen from the examples I've shown in this webinar, a lot of the activities are pretty intuitive, but they gradually get more challenging. And since there are so many of these activities, we can develop the activities to progress as the year goes on, which I think is a really important aspect of this book, the way it's structured. It allows us to really keep on with these activities as the year goes on, and students can learn more and more in-depth usages with these grammar contexts and concepts. So my favorite passage of this book is actually in the introduction. Killgallon says, "Nothing in this work text is difficult to learn. You don't have to know a lot about grammar. You don't have to learn about lots of terms. You don't have to study to take tests, but you do have to want to improve the sentences you write. This work text will show you how." Then he has a quote by Mies van der Rohe, I don't know how to pronounce that. First you have to learn something, and then you can go out and do it. And I think it's a really great quote, and it really sums up nicely Killgallon's whole book and his point. You're learning to imitate these great writers, and then you're doing it yourself. You're taking their ideas and you're doing it yourself. And it's a way to internalize all of these great sentence compositions. But the first part of this passage is huge for me personally, because I'm terrible at grammar and I have a lot of insecurities as an English teacher when it comes to teaching grammar. I really don't know much about grammar at all. But this book gives me so much confidence. I'm a literature major, so I'm not big on grammar, but as he says, you don't have to learn lots of terms, so that's huge. Especially, I think it's a big draw for students, because grammar can be really difficult, and I think students have a hard time with it. But this is pretty fun, I think, comparatively. And for any other English teachers out there who are like me and are extremely insecure about grammar, I think this is a fantastic resource. And it's short, does not take long to read through, and it's just really nice to have a quick little guide for lessons and activities to utilize in the classroom. So yeah, that's my webinar. I hope it was insightful and I didn't bore you to death. Thanks for listening.